benefits that can be experienced from a well-curated, well-executed podcast guest marketing campaign are enormous. You can build your authority, grow your know, like, and trust factor, bring new people into your circle, and take advantage of great SEO perks. But in order for your message to be impactful, you need to find the right podcast to be a guest on. If you don't find shows that align with your mission and your message, you are not going to have the same impact, and it's not going to deliver the results that you're looking for. Today we're going to talk about how to find the right podcasts that fit your brand so each and every guest appearance you make serves you for years to come. I'm Jason Cercone, and I'm on a mission to bring purpose and clarity to podcast guest marketing with this channel. If you are into that message as well, please subscribe and click the little bell so you're the first to know when new content goes live. Also, if you enjoy this video today, please, before you leave, give it a big thumbs up so more great viewers just like you can find it in YouTube's algorithm. So let's look at this in the most logical of ways. If you worked in environmental cleanup, for example, do you think your message would be well received if you went on a fantasy football podcast? No. Now, I'm not saying that fantasy football players don't care about the environment, but they're not listening to that podcast for information about environmental cleanup. They are listening to that podcast so they can get tips and strategies on how to beat their friends at fantasy football. Will there be some crossover appeal? Maybe, but overall, that message is not going to impact that audience and therefore is not going to serve you and your brand the way you need it to. In order to get positive results from your podcast guest marketing efforts, you need to find podcasts that align with your mission and your message. When you do that, you're going to ensure that your message is being heard by others that are just as passionate about the subject matter as you are. So let's take a minute to talk about how to find podcasts that fit your brand. What's the best way to do this? There are several ways that you can proceed. For starters, ask your friends, family members, colleagues, anybody in your circle, or people in your existing audience for podcast recommendations. What do they listen to? Are there any shows that they're aware of that you can check out? Next, go to Google. Type in podcasts about and then insert your industry, niche, or specialty. Or you can put best, insert industry, niche, or specialty, podcasts. The great news is Google is indexing podcasts as relevant content just as much as anything else that you would find on the internet. So when you're searching for podcasts, the returns you get are going to be plentiful, and you're going to find a lot of good shows that you may want to reach out to. Another great way to find good podcasts is to use the podcast apps themselves. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Podchaser. There are a number of platforms out there that are going to give you the information that you seek. You can also use social media to see if there are any podcasts you want to check out. I mentioned asking your audience a second ago. In addition to that, you can search through hashtags or any conversations that are taking place to see if there are any good podcasts that you might want to reach out to. Another great resource is the top 200 lists on Apple Podcasts. They have many categories that you can peruse, so you're more than likely going to find something that is relevant to your niche, your niche, however you want to say that, your specialty, and you can look through those podcasts and see if any of them strike a chord with you and tell you that these are ones that I want to look into a little bit deeper. You can also sign up for a free service like Matchmaker.fm or subscribe to the Find That Pod newsletter. You can do that at findthatpod.com. When you do that, you'll get podcast suggestions emailed to you on a weekly basis. A service that I use religiously and highly recommend is PODMATCH. You can use PODMATCH to connect with thousands of different podcasts, and you can try it out for free. I included a link down below this video for you to check that out today. And if you don't want to do the heavy lifting yourself, you can outsource podcast outreach to a booking agency or to a guest booking specialist. So now that you've conducted some searches, you've probably found some shows that you want to learn more about. This is where I highly recommend taking your research 1 or 2 steps deeper to really give you a true feel of what this show is all about and whether or not you want to be a part of it. Before you reach out to any podcast, make sure you answer the following 5 questions to make sure they're a good fit for your brand and your efforts. Number 1, is this podcast still producing new content? This is a no-brainer. If they are not producing new shows, then there is nothing there that can benefit you. Just move on to the next one. Number 2, what is the podcast's aesthetic appeal? How creative is the cover art? Does the description accurately portray and tell you what the show is all about? Are the titles of each episode descriptive? Do the show notes make sense and tell you what you're going to get when you listen to that episode? All of these items collectively will create a great representation of what this podcast is all about and if it's something that you want to pursue in regards to a guest appearance. Number 3, what do the ratings and reviews say? Now this part can be tricky because ratings and reviews are subjective to the listener, but you can look through them and see if there are any trends that people are talking about. If the same listener is bringing up the same thing, good or bad, that will tell you whether it makes sense for you to go further in your research. I'm not saying that a review should make or break your decision, but it's definitely something you want to look at because you want to get an idea of what the listeners are experiencing when they listen to that podcast. Number 4, what is the podcast's presence beyond the podcast? Do they have a website? Do they have active social media? Do they have a YouTube channel? Any and all items beyond the actual podcast itself will give you a good idea of how they're going to project your message to the world once it goes live. And finally, number 5, what is the overall production quality? You want to listen to some of the content to get an idea of how that show is produced. I'm not saying you have to listen to tons and tons of episodes, but listen to some of it to get an idea of conversation flow, to get an idea of the overall sound quality, making sure everybody is mic'd properly. These tender loving care items are very important to a podcast production. And if you're going to be a part of it, you want to make sure that the producers and hosts behind that show are putting some time into the quality of their content. To sum things up, gaining positive results in podcast guest marketing starts with finding the right shows to make a guest appearance on. If you go outside of your space and outside of your niche and try to portray your message, it's simply not going to hit your target audience. Stick with the podcast within your space and good things will come. I am on a mission to bring purpose and clarity to podcast guest marketing with this channel. If that is a message you can get on board with, please subscribe and click the bell so you're the first to know when new content goes live every week. And if you like today's video, please give it a big thumbs up so more viewers like yourself can find it in YouTube's algorithm. That's going to bring our time together today to a conclusion. Before you go, please take a second to check out this video about the important role a guest plays in the production of a podcast. Thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you next time.